So this here is resin, or pitch, as it's also known. So what it is it's the sap that comes out of the tree when it's injured. Okay, it crystallizes into this white foamy looking stuff, but it is actually an amber color when it comes out. Now you can tap trees for this. I prefer not to. I prefer to collect it naturally from recently fallen or injured trees when it's still in an amber state, or like this when it's in an older crystallized state. You can also find it in the damaged branches, trees, bark. There's some pitchy pine cones here. Here's one right here. It's all covered in pitch. All right, often the bark that is damaged in the process will have pitch on it too. You can see here where the branch came down. This is, I don't know where the branch is. There's a whole pile of branches behind me from somebody. Unfortunately, the best place to find natural occurring pitch like this is where there's lots of human activity, because they're the ones that do the most damage. They break branches off. They think it's funny. I don't understand why. But anyways, this is the easiest way to find it. I'm lucky in that I have stands of pine to choose from. This is not a naturally occurring forest. This was purposely built. They planted lots of trees, most of them cedar and pine, with a bit of birch and maple and oak mixed in between. When you're collecting the pitch, you gotta be careful, try not to damage the tree. If the outer layer of the bark comes off, it's really not that big of a deal. As you can see, this is already loose. It does naturally shed bark. So those of you that have been taught that pulling off the very, very outside layer that's already loose on trees is bad, you're not actually damaging the tree as long as you do it properly. And if you're not sure if you're doing it properly or not, then I would suggest seeing somebody that knows how to do it. So that's pine pitch. I wanted to show you this stuff. This is quite old, several months old, at least, if not a year. But it's an excellent deposit. So here's that same patch that I just showed you. Sorry, there's a tree in the way. And the sunlight's hitting it weird. But for those of you that are wondering how much do you take, how do you remove it, all that kind of stuff, I literally just break off the stuff that will come off with very little force. All right, I do use my Fisker's clippers. I love these. Multi-purpose. There's a knife. There's a serrated edge, which really honestly does nothing. And then it's a pair of clippers. So I just use it to pry. Oops, sorry, that was probably a little fast. Pry the actual sap and amber off of the tree itself. And then I deposit it into my jar. Now, unfortunately, because I don't have 3 hands, I can't actually show you how I do that. So this is the last spot of pitch that I'm going to show you, just because it's close to the ground. So I can actually, hopefully, set my jar up and my camera up so you can watch me. Now, this particular spot of the forest, I like and I don't like all at the same time. I like it because there's lots of stuff. I don't like it because lots of stuff comes from the houses that are actually behind me. They seem to think that this is their own personal dumping ground for compostable stuff. And unfortunately, they do a lot of damage as well, as you can see. There shouldn't be damage like this close to the ground, unless it was caused by a dog or an animal or something like that, which is possible. But there's tons of debris and dumpings from the houses behind me. But for privacy purposes, I'm going to keep their location and their houses themselves off camera. So as you can see, it's actually really quite simple. Sometimes it takes a little bit of a poking. Oop, lost you off center there. But you can just scrape it down until you get to the point where you can see the inner bark through the sap itself. So it'll become clear and amber, as you saw in the last tree that I had finished clearing out. I know this isn't a great angle, but there. Morning. Morning. There you go. Here's the cedar bark. Okay, as you can see, this tree's long dead and fallen. I don't collect from live samples unless it's necessary, and then I do so responsibly. So the parts that I'm actually looking for today is the hairy part of the bark. So it's not the hard outer parts that you would find like this. Okay, now this is very wet, so it's quite punky. It's actually the inner side, right? So what was originally the inner cambium. So on cedar, this part actually retains quite a bit of the resins, even after the tree has died. And cedar is used for protection purposes. It's often burnt in protection spells as well as purification. Incense. It's great for protection in the home. Oh, look at all the lovely little cedar seeds. Look at that. I got a bunch of those at home, so we're gonna actually leave those because it'll not use the natural bark to break down. The great thing about cedar too is that it's naturally insect repellent. It's also naturally bacteria repellent. Sorry, I'm just trying to peel off this outer stuff because I don't want to take it home. That's why it's often used in decks and fencing and stuff like that, because you don't actually have to seal it. It has natural antibacterial and anti-insect properties to it. They don't like eating it. So it's often the bark is often boiled in antiseptic solutions. See, love that. Look at that lovely, lovely strip. So when I get this home and dry it, I'll be able to shred it. So I'll put it in the dryer when I get home. So I'm going to continue collecting this, and hopefully we can find some other really cool stuff. I got a lucky find here. I found some intact acorns. Now, this time of year, finding them on the tree themselves is kind of difficult, and finding them still intact is also difficult because the squirrels often get to it. The cap is often released because the seed is ready to start to its winter freeze in order to germinate. I think that one's already been trying to crack into by a squirrel. Now, oak is the sacred tree, the tree of life. It is held in reverence, especially by the elders. It is used in so many, many different ways. The acorn itself is a symbol of life and prosperity. Yeah. So if you can find them, get them. This is first year mullein. As you can see, it grows as a rosette in the ground. This one is an excellent example. It hasn't been eaten by anything really. Nobody's really been by to pick it. Lovely, lovely, beautiful, beautiful plant. Now, if you're going to harvest this, leave the root. It's a first year. It'll come back next year to seed, so it'll be a nice, long, tall plant. When I come across a second year, I'll see if I can. Most of them are pretty toasty right now, but if I come across a nice second year mullein, I'll show you guys what it looks like. So I will be harvesting this. I'll be taking the central rosette and most of the smaller leaves. Now this is because of the time of year. We're coming into the end of the season, and we've already had a frost in this area. So by removing the smaller parts of the plant, I'm not actually going to hurt it in any way because it's done most of its collection for winter hibernation already. It's not going to come free. I'm going to take my clippers to it. For its winter hibernation and storing it in its roots for next year. But I'll leave the outside basal leaves just so that it can continue to photosynthesize. There we go. As you can see, I took out the center of the plant, but I left the basal rosettes. Now, I know I can do this because there's not that many people in this area that actually do forage on their own. The ones that do, I've taught myself. So that is why I was able to take most of the plant.